Speaking of our matches, we're going to go ahead and head on into the second one of the evening. It is going to be Brazil taking on New Zealand. I am excited for this one, Cora. I know you are. Brazil was your pick.
It was.
To win this whole tournament. We see now Brazil represented by Legolas, Koglarine, Loxodontes, Leomane. New Zealand represented by Pathra, Ting Tong, Slayer Max, and Flame Lord. New Zealand came into this with, frankly, just a big question mark, right? It was no one was really sure what they were looking at. Australia, certainly between, for A and Z, Australia looked like the stronger team on paper, certainly the names that you would associate more with competitive Hearthstone success. So New Zealand maybe a little bit in the shadow, but New Zealand was able to take not only the inaugural Australia-New Zealand Bowl, but also the group with a 4-1 record. They ended up coming in first. Brazil, they've lobbied for a long time that Brazil is a Hearthstone powerhouse. They are to be feared and respected when it comes to the tavern, and they've come in thus far and shown exactly that, right? It hasn't necessarily always been pretty. We saw, especially in the early stages, as Journey to Un'Goro meta was first beginning, they were willing to take wild stabs at things, but they've really tightened up the decks they brought. They've tightened up the deck lists, and overall it has translated into winning results.
And this is one of the teams that, obviously I'm quite biased because I did pick Brazil to win the tournament, but absolute respect over to New Zealand. They've been doing so well in this tournament. But just looking at the lineup from Brazil as far as players, it's 4 players who are really on very even footing. They all have good experience in Hearthstone, whether it be streaming, open cups, HCT experience. And I think they work very well together. I think we've been seeing the growth of Brazil throughout this tournament. And really, like you said earlier on, the point where they've stopped bringing maybe some more questionable deck choices, and they've really started, getting down to the grind and performing very well as a result.
Yeah, you mentioned all the different tournaments they're competing in. Copa America, just another big one that for LATAM is so huge. It is the opportunity for players in this region to get experience. Loxodontes is one of those players who has had a great deal of success in Copa America. Legolas, another player. We actually had a chance to speak to Legolas just recently about the Hearthstone Global Games.
Hi, I'm Legolas. I play for Team Brazil on the Global Games and hope you guys cheer for us. Qualifying for Phase 2 feels pretty amazing. Brazil supporters are really passionate, so we have this pressure, but we have a lot of pressures on ourselves to really accomplish something on this opportunity for Brazil. So we are very, very happy, and it feels amazing to be on the second phase for sure. I think our preparation is our strong point on this tournament. We are very dedicated to it. We have like a coach and an analyst that are friends of ours that volunteer to help us. And Koglarine is the talented, relaxed guy. He's always on a top level, and he is a specialist on like rogue, so we count on him a lot on this deck and trust him a lot. Leomane is like our small child, he's the underage one, and he's very dedicated to the team. He's always trying to help, very passionate, and a very skilled one. He likes to play smart decks, so we trust him a lot on that way. Loxodontes wasn't the most known for us from the Global Games. He usually is the calm guy, he doesn't talk too much, but he's always trying to help the team. And I'm the captain role. I try to remember the guys about everything, to schedule the trainings and make sure everybody is playing on the same page, everybody's calm, and everybody's taking their time to play the game as they should do. I think the best part on Global Games for Brazil in general is having a shot to play against these big players on a tournament level for sure. When I saw I was on the Sweden group, I was pretty excited because I knew I would be able to play against them on a tournament level. I personally think Brazil has what it takes to go all the way to the finals. We are one of the most dedicated teams because we really try hard to do the best we can on each game. I really look forward for the next games, and I really think we can do all the way to the finals and get this title for Latin America.
Yeah, when Legolas hit us up, it was actually right at the beginning of all this when the casters were first announced, and we were all talking amongst ourselves on Twitter and saying, okay, who does each team, who do we each pick to win the whole thing? Legolas just snap replies, and he just says, pick Brazil, easiest money you'll ever make, and he's been extremely confident. He's been extremely fun. So Legolas has certainly been one of those players who we've gotten to know through this tournament.
He posted on your tweet today, actually, your announcement of my brutal defeat from a card game we played earlier, and he said that he was feeling more confident than ever going into today's match. So New Zealand has a lot to live up to. We just saw that Legolas is very confident in his team, but certainly New Zealand is a force. They have proven themselves many times over in the first stage of this tournament and now in the second stage as well.
Yeah, let's go ahead and see the picks for game number 1 as they're coming in. There's going to be a Leo Main on Shaman, Slayer Max on Druid, and if I remember correctly, Slayer Max last week was playing the Aggro Druid, as is befitting a man.
Named
with
Slayer
name,
Max.
Slayer Max. He's not Slayer Medium. He's not a little Slayer.
Oh no, he's not Slayer Light.
Yeah, just all killer,
Slayer
no filler.
Min.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Aggro Druid, if it is what it's going to be, again, is going to have its work cut out for it against that Bloodlust-style Shaman. That Shaman can crowd up the board, can get that Flame Tongue going, leverage the Jade Claws to bring the board to heal, and then it is going to be a situation where they win out in the end if the Aggro Druid can't necessarily get too far ahead.
Rob, have you ever devolved a living mana?
I have not had the joy.
Oh, it's a good time. It is a good time.
I would imagine. Obviously, you devolve it, you're getting rid of the mana. The Druid just never gets the mana back.
They don't.
No.
They are denied all of that mana moving forward. And devolve just normally as a tool against Aggro Druid, because Aggro Druid is relying so heavily on small minions that are then buffed to levels of insanity. You devolve those minions into wisps or 1-drops with very little health.
Much more manageable.
Yes, much more manageable minions that can usually be killed by Maelstrom Portal. So if the Shaman has those resources and then can fight the early game, with Firefly, with Flame Tongue, with Jade Claws, they're generally in a pretty good position in that matchup. If it's Jade Druid, the Shaman still can get on the board very early, can be very aggressive, and they want to try and close out that game as quickly as possible. But the Druid does have tools to fight back against aggression in the early game, namely Wrath, Feral Rage. They have stabilizing tools such as Swipe, but it can still be pretty difficult.
Yeah, Leo Main, one of those players who has been knocking on the door of the Hearthstone Championship Tour for some time. He's someone who is just always right there with the chance to make it to a championship. Has never quite had that finish, but has certainly been fun to watch in the Hearthstone Global Games as he continues to improve upon his craft, which I've no doubt will continue to translate into results in the Hearthstone Championship Tour. We're going to go ahead and get into it, though. Is going to be that Aggro Druid versus the Bloodlust Shaman, as we predicted. Vicious Fledgling in the opening hand against Shaman.
If you've got Innervate, I say go for it, but
there's no Innervate. That's a question.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was gonna say I don't think you can actually keep that. Instead, though, they do get a pretty decent opening curve.
So Hungry Crab actually is quite good against Bloodlust Shaman because of Primal Fin Totem. The ones that it does summon at the end of every turn are Murlocs, and the Hungry Crab comes down, eats the Murloc, and then immediately can challenge the Primal Fin Totem. So that can be very difficult for the Shaman to get through, just because their only real method of killing that before turn 4 is like Flame Tongue on a minion, and then turn 4 they sometimes have to expend a Jade Lightning onto a 1-mana crab that's already gotten an incredible amount of value.
Yeah, we see there Leo Main pitching everything except that Bloodsail Corsair. Gets the patches, though, back in his hand. Not what he wants to see. Thankfully, can potentially get some value with the Flame Tongue Totem. We saw that a little bit earlier on tonight. Slayer Max, meanwhile, has a pretty clear and mapped out set of turns in front of him. One unfortunate point for him is these Mark of Yasirajas. Devolve doesn't care. Devolve does not care that you spent mana to buff your minion. Devolve says, look, that's a 1-drop, now it's a Wisp.
And that's also a way that you can combat a Hungry Crab that has gobbled up one of your Murlocs. Devolve is going to neutralize that buff as well. You just need to know really when is the right time, right? Because you have 2 copies of Devolve, but the Druid has more than 2 large board states that put you in awkward positions. So you need to know when to devolve and then when you're going to be able to build up your own significant board to swing the tide and then be able to start trading with minions more often than not.
Bittertide Hydra.
Okay.
It's big. You like that.
It's a big dude.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit risky because the Shaman has a lot of ways to deal 1 damage, and 1 damage turns into 3 damage when it hits the Bittertide Hydra, but
Yeah, Bittertide Hydra can oftentimes actually just come out against a board, a really wide board, that just makes you eat 3 damage pings until you're dead.
Yep. It's like you've given your opponent's minions Bloodlust because you played Bittertide Hydra. So you sort of have to weigh, is 8 damage worth the potential that I could just die?
Speaking of weighing in on things, though, this Enchanted Raven, is that going to the face, or are you even bothering to trade?
So if you bother to trade, Flame Tongue Totem comes out and still kills it, and then you've missed 4 damage.
Yep.
And if your opponent devolves this, you're fine. If they play Jade Claws, you're fine. They can't Jade Lightning, so I think I probably would have hit face there.
It's just a situation where, as this match goes on, you did not have the explosive Innervate start with, say, Mark of the Lotus, Power of the Wild, wide with 2 3s. So how long do you actually think you get to keep this board? The answer is
well, I'd say probably
turn.
not very long now.
You got a solid 1 turn where you were dominant.
And maybe you know that your opponent has the ability to build large boards as well. Their game plan is very similar to yours, so you need to fight minion-to-minion combat early on.
Right.
That could make the trade make more sense. But even still, every way that Raven was going to die was going to happen, whether there was 1/1/2 on board or 2.
All right, so Slayer Max just chooses to go wide here. Interestingly enough, could have chosen to put down the Hungry Crab, buff it with the Mark of Yasiraj, have a 3/4 on the board, draw an all-important card.
Yeah.
Instead, posturing like he has buffs.
Well,
Like he has the wide ability to Power the Wild or Mark of the Lotus. I mean, it is worth noting that with what's on board, he can trade out to deal with the Flame Tongue Totem. He's going into swipe next turn, so he may feel that the swipe allows him to clean up anything left over on the board with these small minions, but...
So the 2 real options were just Crab and Mark, or play 3 minions. And this way is beneficial if you do draw into one of those buffs. You have 4 of them in the deck, as well as 2 copies of Savage Roar. So I think that this is probably just, it's playing to what you don't have in your hand.
Right.
Whereas Mark of Yasiraj, you were just a little bit punished with
And
1 minion on
realistically-
board. Maybe it could happen again.
Basically, there's a decent chance that Crab would have stuck, and you could have gotten 2 draws
Yeah.
off the Mark of Yasiraj, so...
So swipe clears board. Hero Power leaves a 1/1 on the board. You can just sacrifice the draw from the Mark. But then your resources they're a little bit limited. Bittertide looks like it is marked for 5.
Yeah.
Which means you do still have a couple of draws to pick up additional turns going on after that. But
I think I just like Mark into Hero Power here.
Yeah, I agree. Mark, trade into the Flame Tongue, Hero Power down. This is the strongest board state that you can build for yourself this turn, and swipe is too valuable.
Yeah, managing to go ahead and keep the board now. The board is actually pretty healthy against the Shaman for now. You're really kind of saying, hey, do you want to devolve this board?
You never want to. Especially when your opponent has 2 copies of Living Mana in the deck and you're going into turn 5.
Yeah. That's why the devolve bait here feels realistically like it's not actually a bait. Your opponent is probably going to wait to see a little bit more before they go for the devolve there. And in the interim, you just actually get to go ahead and keep the board and kind of run a little bit rampant.
It's not too much damage, but it will matter. You missed 4 on the first turn. So you kind of do need to make up for it a little bit now. Leo Main does have Doppelgangster Evolve on turn 6, so he wants to keep the board state under control. And if he can go into turn 6, well, New Zealand's board state is not out of control, they'll be in a very good spot. There's a lot of 6 drops with Taunt.
Slayer Max is like, I could play the 5-mana 8/8. That seems good. That's really big. Could just go ahead and clear everything except the Wrath of Air Totem.
With Wrath of Air Totem on the board, you get maybe slightly punished by double Maelstrom Portal, but that's expecting a lot from a 4-card hand.
Well, Devolve Maelstrom Portal is also still pretty good there, which is not that unrealistic.
No. If you put out the Hydra, you have an 8/8, a 3/4, and a 1/2 against, again, Wrath of Air Totem. And Devolve Maelstrom there, you're likely still left with a 4-drop with some amount of health. And that's worst case scenario.
I think I leave up the Wrath of Air Totem, play the Bitter Tide, just trade out with the rest of the board, because you actually have a unique opportunity, I think, in this matchup here to go ahead and just have the board.
That's a bit unusual for Druid.
Yeah, we
Just
saw
because
Leo
the-
Main utilizing the hero power early because, frankly, that was all he really had to do.
Shaman just has better generation of minions in this matchup.
What it does not have in this deck, though, is Hex.
No.
Hex would feel really good right here.
That does hurt in some cases. I've wondered about teching in. I actually have a copy of Lightning Storm in my ladder build in place of one copy of Manatide Totem, just because I was running into so much of the mirror.
Yeah, and to be fair, nobody expects it.
Yeah, exactly. So there is something to be said for unconventional choices in conventional decks, but I don't expect that we'll be seeing it today.
All right, there we see the Stonehill Defender choices. Thing from below, I want to say, is probably at about 3 mana now. We've seen a Primal Fin Totem, 2 hero power rolls. Sawgoth the Slither are certainly
Flame Tongue
big.
Totem we saw as
so
well.
that 2 mana Thing from below, I think, so you could actually just play it on this turn. Yep. It puts up a big wall for the Bittertide Hydra to have to get through. And softening it down to 3 health would certainly be pretty big. Okay, this is a much more manageable board.
Yes, this is absolutely fine. The big punish here would be if New Zealand, had a reload behind the Devolve. If there was living mana this turn, for instance, then that would be quite disastrous for Brazil. But fortunately for them, New Zealand does not have significant means of reload. Swipe hero power, swipe Bloodsail Mark of the Lotus actually pushes a lot of damage.
I'm eyeing swipe Bloodsail Mark of the Lotus here.
And then you're looking at Savage Roar for the next turn, possibly.
Yeah, you are finally getting that big board, that wide board, rather, that you can put a buff on. You know, if you get Power of the Wild or a second Mark of the Lotus off the top next turn and the board survives, just insanity.
Corsair grabs Patches, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, this is quite good.
I mean, you don't even have to commit the swipe here if you don't want to.
How much damage do they have?
That's not lethal.
4, 8, 10, 16.
No, it's not lethal, but
It's still good.
no, it's good damage. It's good damage they're pushing there. They have the swipe to be able to potentially break up whatever comes up on the next turn.
Swipe is damaged through taunt, importantly, and you just saw a taunt be picked up by Stonehill.
Yep, and at this point, you're essentially saying, hey, I'm going to get that Savage Roar in while it's still good. You are cashing in. You are pushing pressure. Your opponent's down to 15.
And that's a big mistake that I do see a lot of these Druid decks making, is that people choose not to play Savage Roar when it's not lethal damage, even though it may be the most potential damage that you get out of the Savage Roar. It doesn't always have to be a finisher, similar to Bloodlust.
You know what is a terrible finisher is Innervate.
It is. Yeah. Doesn't do much.
0 mana, but it does 0 damage. Yeah, not great here. But the swipe will allow for New Zealand to make quick work of the Terram, and then they're just going to have to push.
They are a little bit short here. Brazil could potentially stabilize very low because of that Innervate draw from New Zealand. If Brazil clears the board, New Zealand whiffs again.
Well, double Bloodlust does not help. Yeah, the first Bloodlust is going to be good for getting through the Senjin. And then that second Bloodlust,
Thing from below comes down.
Yeah, Thing from below is key here. Now, I don't think there's a second swipe generally in most of the copies of this deck. Yeah.
That's
okay.
gonna hurt.
Ping, ping, hero power, living mana.
Yep. 100%. You're not going to die from anything that Brazil possibly has. And the big punish here would be spell damage Maelstrom. Second copy of Devolve still leaves too many minions on board.
Yeah.
So it really just is spell power Maelstrom. Yeah, that's not going to do it.
Yeah, the aggro druid was able to, get going in the first few turns there. The hero powers from Leo Main, certainly cheapened the Thing from below that came off the Stonehill Defender, but they didn't really pressure that much, and yeah, New Zealand able to take that one.
Just to note, Brazil was left at 4 health there. Had New Zealand pushed with that 4-attack Enchanted Raven on turn 2, the game would have been over 1 turn earlier, and then Spell Power Maelstrom Portal would not have even been an out for Brazil. So they weren't, it didn't cost them anything in this case. But you do kind of need to weigh your options here. Does attacking mean that my minion dies more times than if I were to attack, their minion in this case. In that case, it did not. So I would have liked to see them push for the 4 points of damage, and it did make a slight difference in when the game ended, but ultimately didn't affect the game overall because the Druid just had the development very early on, and the Shaman couldn't do anything about it.
I think that is a tricky situation, though, when you're considering how exactly you want to approach that, because I think there are a lot of different kind of like litmus tests you put your play through to kind of decide what is best. And conventional wisdom tells you that, you need to keep the board clear, right? 4 damage at that point sets them to 26, which is still a long way off from winning the game. But well navigated by Slayer Max and the rest of New Zealand, we head into game number 2, which is going to be Loxodonte on the Druid versus Pathra on the Paladin. Now, Pathra and New Zealand in general are generally people who subscribe to what are the most successful deck lists based on the numbers, right? Like what's really popular with the pros, what's really popular on kind of your vicious syndicate meta snapshots. Like what are you actually winning that is tested and based on empirical data, as opposed to other players who are just like, this is what my heart tells me to play. So they're pretty all business.
Playing with the heart of the cards. Yeah, but it has worked incredibly well for them so far. They made it to this point on a 4-1 match record. Now they've won their first match in stage 2, and that's a lot more, frankly, than I think most people expected of them.
Yeah.
Like you said before, when it came to Australia versus New Zealand, Australia, just their team lineup looked to be the more conventionally strong team. But New Zealand, whatever they've been doing thus far, has been paying off in spades, and they're looking to keep it up. A win for New Zealand here, or a win for Brazil, for that fact, would send them through to stage 3, I believe.
I got to point out, Pathra is someone who is generally doing a bunch of different things. She's streaming, she's playing. When sets come out, Pathra is generally not the person who's sitting there in the lab, like building the deck list, giving things attempts, and trying to figure out what's good. She generally kind of waits and sees what people who are more about the deck building does, and then she navigates the decks really well. She's someone who has very high finishes on ladder, and she's just extremely efficient with her time. And from what we know of the New Zealand team, she's really kind of been that driving force that makes it go, make sure everybody is studying up, make sure everyone has the deck list. So Pathra really doing a good job driving this team forward, and I think it really speaks to the advantage of having a team that has good infrastructure, has a clear line as to who does what, who's responsible for what, and then still has the ability to come together as a team, analyze each play as it's happening. And I gotta feel like that's the secret to New Zealand's success, because I think they've toppled teams that maybe have individuals that are more skilled in a vacuum.
Yes.
But they've been able to leverage that specific blend they've used to have great results. But I do want to call out that talking to Pathra, she did mention that Brazil is a scary team because they are battle tested.
Yeah.
And they are a team that have shown improvement over, on a week-to-week basis. They are not a team that is winning through any, great swing of luck. They are a team that's just gotten better and they've grown together. So Pathra did call out to me that is a team that they were watching in the group.
Well, it is going to be a fantastic rest of the match, I'm sure. New Zealand up 1-0, and now we're going to be seeing what looks to be a mid-range Murloc Paladin build for Pathra up against an aggro Druid build for Loxodonte. We see Hungry Crab in the opening mulligan going to get this Druid off to a fantastic start, nomming down on some of those valuable Murlocs.
Yeah, just ready to give him the old snip there. I actually like this whole hand from Loxodonte because of what you're playing against. Now, he doesn't know what Paladin this is, but I like Hungry Crab because of the upside it represents. Because if you land that Hungry Crab, you are just sticking a 3/4 to the board. You're destroying one of their minions. It allows you to deal with something, say Tidecaller, say Rockpool Hunter. Yeah.
I would say maybe 8 times out of 10, your opponent is going to have a Murloc on 1 or 2. And even Control Paladins are running Hydrologists. So Hungry Crab is just a good keep. Deathwing in the build. That is just another option. It's a dragon you can net from the Curator. It's a reset in the late game, and it can just be a 12 damage finish in some cases. I like it.
All right, we saw Pathra there kind of hesitate on that Tidecaller, recalling that all cards were kept. Loxodonte just gets this little bit of a smile there. Second Crab. Oh my goodness.
That's going to be, it's going to be really tough for Pathra now to stick anything.
Pathra just kind of wincing like, come on, man, don't do this.
Don't drag it out, Loxo. Don't do it.
I mean, they still got to talk it out, make sure it's fine. And there is Citizen Snips, as we call him.
It is fine.
Oh my goodness. Next turn, if another Murloc comes down, that is just,
It's giving me the scary. Well, I mean, you can rock pool this turn, hope that the crab trades in, and then hope you can coin consecration. We know that's not how it's going to go, and at that point,
oh my goodness, just getting a little bit cheeky. Loxodontes, please.
Rude about it. Wasn't it rude enough that you're playing Hungry Crabs on 1 and 2? Oh man. You know what? They did get a little bit rolled in that first game. I can understand wanting to assert some dominance, and holy cannoli, Rob.
Those
That's
Hungry
turn
Crabs
3.
are pit fighters.
Those are Don Han Cho crabs.
Oh,
They're
my
Don
goodness.
Han crabs.
Loxodontes,
Those are Prince
having a
Malka
good time.
crabs.
Yeah. It's what a time to be alive.
It's a beautiful sight.
You start out as a 1-man, a 1-2. You get the gym. You read some books. You eat healthy.
You bulk up. You live that Frodan lifestyle.
You drink that health juice,
That
and then all of a
Lothar
sudden,
lifestyle.
oh, the 5/6 Hungry Crab. And yeah, Pather's gonna put down a taunt. You know, just why don't we just pump the brakes on this game? But
Why don't we just prevent 4 damage here?
I think the Hungry Crabs will go ahead and just hit face.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good use
Oh,
of
goodness.
your crabs.
There are just certain games, and that is the power of tech cards. That is why, you know, we see people who are not fans of Hungry Crab or Galaka Crawler
They've
because
been on the receiving end of those crabs one too many times, and I can understand.
you just get so much on the upside from that. You know, we see New Zealand kind of discussing over the choices there. You know, some of those taunts were bigger, but do you ever get to play them?
Nope. No, you do not.
Power of the Wild off the top? Nope.
No.
Vicious Fledgling.
As if this board wasn't terrifying enough. Do you just hero power
I was
so
gonna
you
say,
can
I think
get 5
I think
through?
you're hero powering. Let's be reasonable, but
Let's not get carried away. Theoretically, if Pathra had Wild Pyromancer equality in hand,
yeah.
that could cause problems.
But because you've seen those 2 early Murlocs, you are relatively sure that's just not going to be the case. And an easy one for Loxodontes.
All of 2 minutes and
Brazil.
46 seconds. Yeah.
I would like to sit there and tell you that that was a skillfully navigated game in which Brazil made numerous decisions that really showed that high Hearthstone IQ. But instead, what I'm going to tell you is there were 2 Hungry Crabs in the first 5 or 6 cards in the deck against a Paladin that played 2 early Murlocs. By the way, followed up by 2 Marks of Lotus.
You know, I didn't expect to be talkstoning quite this soon again, but here we are. And
Ooh,
that was a fast one.
That one's good for the heart,
That
man.
hurt.
Some-
There's not a lot of words we can give about that one.
Windmill Slam. Posterize.
That's 2 words.
Dunk.
Yeah, dunk.
Ankle breaking crossover.
Ooh.
Yeah. No,
Like
it was gross. New Zealand though didn't look. You know, Pathra looks like she kind of chuckled
took
it
it in
off.
stride.
Yeah. There are just games like that in Hearthstone where things kind of snowball out of control. Let's go ahead and take a look at the score though. It was a minute ago. Well, 3 minutes ago.
It's like we were just here, Rob.
New Zealand was up 1-0. Now Brazil ties up the series with that convincing performance from a pair of Hungry Crabs.
What's worse, a vicious fledgling on 1 that kills you by 4, or that?
I mean, I don't know. Game 3 is going to be Legolas taking on Flame Lord. Is going to be the Mage versus the Priest. I got to calm down from that one. That one was just...
I'm riding the adrenaline high a little bit. That was...
Yeah.
I haven't seen a game like that in... It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a long time.
I certainly have not won a game that fast in a long time.
Right. Mage versus Priest. So we've obviously seen both classes now tonight. Priest is kind of on the bubble. It is
Yeah.
not one of those core classes in the Year of the Mammoth meta that has really established themselves as being the powerhouse class per se. But Priest is certainly, I think, more viable than it's ever been. It is not just relying on the Dragon Priest style of deck to carry it. It has a bunch of viable options and is really powerful. Now, one card I've been kind of tinkering around with lately that I want to call out is Binding Heal. Now, I've been playing it in Kazakus Priest where, you know, at that point, you're just looking for maybe the extra 2 to 3 cards to fill out what your deck looks like. And it has upside with Akanai Soul Priest. And then obviously the ability to just get rid of a minion if you really need to. Obviously, you're sacrificing 5 of your own health. But
Yeah.
in other Priest decks in general, you know, we saw Life Coach and Team Germany kind of experimenting with it in Stage 1. The extra burst heal you get is super relevant against mages, where a lot of times it just kind of comes down to they set you down to a health total and they say, I have exactly this much burn.
Yeah.
Priest just has a bunch of different ways to actually deal with mage that actually just reward them with healing. So I'm very curious to see if we're going to ever see that style of Priest again in stage 2 and 3, or if we're just going to see people kind of like buckle down and say, okay, we know what the established decks that work are, and we're just going to go with that.
I mean, you have sort of small aspects of that within every Priest deck because you do see Lyra in every Priest deck, and then that just opens up a whole wealth of possibilities for unexpected counters to, the burn plan of Mage, where maybe you net an additional Holy Nova or an additional copy of Binding Heal, something that can get you out of their very small burn range. But I like the flexibility of Priest. I like the option of Kazakus Priest. I know Brian Kibler was playing Kazakus Priest, no joke, in top 100 ladder today, and having great success with it. It's a deck that is seeing results and has been a bit of a meme in the past, couple of months since Reno Jackson rotated out, but you can still play one of decks with great success in this meta. So while I don't think we'll be seeing it today from New Zealand, I do think that it is something that these teams should be keeping maybe in their back pocket, maybe as a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, one thing that's worth noting is the Priest, obviously all the Reno decks lost out to Reno Jackson, hence they're Kazakus decks now because Reno's just in wild, but Priest more so than any other class has the ability to kind of neutralize that with greater healing potion, obviously tends to do a lot of the same things. I mentioned Binding Heal. You have the ability to heal there. As you said, I don't think that's necessarily what is going to be here. There's just too much power and consistency in other Priest decks, but we'll just have to wait and see what exactly it is. And Double Dragonfire Potion tells us that at the very least, we're not dealing with Kazakus, but it might be something more control-oriented as we do see the Elise.
Yeah, it looks like maybe a little bit of a value Priest going on here. I like it. It's unique. It's something that we didn't see in our earlier match, whereas Argentina had a Priest deck that was teched very aggressively against aggressive decks, and then Philippines brought a Silence Priest. This is something a little bit different. So always glad to see. Brazil looks like they've got potentially any Mage deck nowadays. It is always, there's very small differences between the Mages. Obviously the biggest one being, those Discover Mage builds and Secret Mage having the largest differences, but even still, there is a core of like 15 to 20 cards in every Mage deck that is just too good to get rid of.
All right, well, the Acolyte of Pain does kind of give a little bit away. Generally, we see the Acolyte of Pain mostly reserved for Freeze Mage these days. If this is going to be Freeze Mage against the style of Control Priest, the Control Priest is going to have to save ways to heal. That is super important. We see Priest of the Feast in hand for Flame Lord, and while that's a card sometimes you tempo out on 4 because the stat spread is very favorable, that might just be a card that sits in the hand after a while.
It's a card that is going to be higher reward in the later game if you can figure out that this is a Freeze Mage. But even still, Freeze Mage versus Burn Mage, slight differences, but the burn plan is going to be the same, right? It's going to be Alexstrasza into Double Fireball Frostbolt or Pyroblast, that type of thing. So you really need to plan the same way for each of the decks, and then the secrets are a bit different depending, and one deck runs Doomsayers, one doesn't. So that's going to be a little bit inconsequential. In either case, the Priest of the Feast is going to be a pivotal tool for getting out of range post Alexstrasza.
Well, Flame Lord doesn't have a clear play in front of him. Could Norshire Cleric and Coin swing the Crystalline Oracle into the Arcanologist and heal up the Arcanologist, but you're giving up a lot of resources there to essentially draw a card and set your Norshire Cleric up to die. So
Shadow Visions is very useful for the Ungoro pack that we saw from Elise. There is combo in this deck.
Right. One thing that's worth noting is Shadow Visions in general in the very beginning, yes, it is going to net you a card, but you generally don't have as much control over what that card's going to be, depending on how many spells you're running in your deck. And that's the strength of Shadow Visions, is that when your deck is thinner and you know kind of the 2 or 3 spells that are in there, if one is an Ungoro pack, for example, you can kind of target that and go for it. At that point, the reason Flame Lord, I think, took so long is just Shadow Visions could have been any wide range of things, but he didn't have anything else to do.
You don't know what you can get. You also don't know what you need at that point. If you're put in a position where you need to Shadow Visions for Shadow Word Pain, you know what you want, you know what you have to get. In this case, New Zealand didn't know what their most useful pick off of that Shadow Visions was going to be, so they just went with what's the widest possibility, which in this case was just going to be Divine Spirit.
Yeah, one of the strengths of Mage right now is just, that secret comes down, in Flame Lord, there was a time back when where Flame Lord could have had a pretty easy idea of what that secret was, maybe pre-Year of the Mammoth, pre-Journey to Ungoro, but now he's forced to respect a lot of different options in terms of what it could be. As I said earlier, Potion of Polymorph, mostly not being run right now in decks. Mirror Entity as well, also kind of gone. So the main things he's going to be considering this is probably going to be would be, say, Ice Block, Ice Barrier, Counterspell. So it's probably just safe to play down a minion. And now I think the Power Word Shield here, not only does it draw a card, but it's also a good test.
After this, you can start to narrow down. This is blocker barrier almost guaranteed.
Yeah. Vaporize, certainly powerful in its own right. Doesn't really tend to see much play.
Okay, so Brazil definitely with some anti-aggro techs in this build. 2 copies of Volcanic Potion. Not much that they can really be doing here, unfortunately. If they want to expend Frostbolt, they can get this Medivh's Valet off the board, which is valuable because a Northshire Cleric coming down behind it would allow for additional draw for Flame Lord. So you would like to clear this off the board.
I think that's just going to have to be the play. The Acolyte of Pain you really don't want to play unless you yourself can ping it. So
that's going to be reserved for 5.
Yeah. Just toss out the ping. Not a super satisfying turn, but you've cleared up the board. And now Flame Lord has the measure of this secret for the most part, so doesn't really have to do too much messing around to try to figure out exactly what it is. One thing I've been surprised by tonight is the lack of Eater of Secrets. Because we were seeing a lot more of that last week as Mage has kind of risen to popularity. Obviously, Eater of Secrets allows you to make that final push through the Ice Block at the end of the game when the Mage is, in that 1 to 2 turn lethal stage.
It's just the biggest slap in the face to Mage. It got to the point where I was playing some Gunther-style Mage myself, and I was running into so much of the mirror that I teched an Eater of Secrets, but I got Eater of Secrets more than I was able to use the Eater of Secrets. It was very, very common for that brief period of time.
Yeah, I mean, the prominence of Mage has certainly made this so powerful. I like the hold here on the Priest of the Feast for the reason I brought up earlier. Yeah, 3-6 is good right now. It's good for just crowding up the board. You have something that's durable. Might just require a Fireball to get rid of, but if the Alexstrasza does come out and you need the ability to cheaply heal, you're saving the coin, you have the Priest of the Feast. There are other cheap spells in here besides Divine Spirit, so.
Okay, with the Mana Worm draw, that leads me to believe that we're not looking at a Freeze Mage style of deck that is running Doomsayers. I think this may just be a Burn Mage that's running Acolyte of Pains.
I was going to say, the Mage deck pulls off the disguise. It's actually
rips
Burn
off the
Mage.
mask.
Yeah. And again, this is just the, I feel like we just keep saying it, but Mage is so flexible right now that you can look at the class and kind of be like, well, I want all this, I'm going to have some of this too. I want more draw, so let's just throw in some Acolyte of Pains.
I feel like a Hearthstone detective. Have you watched Streamer Showdown by any chance? The
Yeah.
Hearthstone edition.
Yep.
The one game they have where they reveal, a card by card, cards that could be in any deck archetype, and you have to guess what deck it is.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's like Patron Warrior, they have like Fiery War Axe is the first one. Then they have like Acolyte of Pain. And then finally the very last card is like Grim Patron. I feel like that's what we're sort of into. It's like Mage, okay. Ice Barrier. Fireball.
Primordial Glyph.
Blood Mage Thalnos.
What?
And you get to Mana Worm and then finally Medivh, and you're like, oh, I get it. I know what it is now.
Yeah.
But it takes you a while.
Yeah, obviously we're jabbering a little bit, but this is kind of the early jockeying stage wherein both players are basically trying to assemble the pieces. Flame Lord realizes he's probably at some point going to have to burst heal because his deck, from what we can see, certainly doesn't look like it puts out a lot of pressure. And Legolas just looking for more burn, did get a ton of value off the Acolyte of Pain.
That's exactly what he needed because the opening 5 cards for Brazil were not going to be very effective against Priest. But to be fair, the Priest cards aren't going to be very effective against Mage right now either. So remember that 3-minute game that we just had? This is going to be
This is what
the
averages is out.
exact opposite. Yeah. So if you put the two together, you get like 2 average length games.
Yeah, there is a set amount of damage in this deck from Brazil. So New Zealand's plan, again, looking at what is probably more control-oriented, is just, and value-oriented, really, is just going to be Outlast, right? Once the mage has drawn ahead, hits fatigue before the priest, runs out of burn, and again, with what is in Flamelord's hand, it actually seems fairly reasonable to believe that they could endure a lot of burn. You've already got the Shadow or Death for the Alexstrasza, you've got the Priest of the Feast, you kept the coin, and Legolas and Brazil also realize, hey, they're just stockpiling resources. It is very clear what they're doing.
I mean, you have Priest of the Feast, 2 copies of Divine Spirit. If you want this Priest of Feast to stick on the board, it will. Granted, you still want to save it for later in the game, but with the expenditure of the single copy of Divine Spirit here, that's just New Zealand wanting to get consistent card draw. And also, we saw Inner Fire off of Shadow Visions early on. If they pick up that Inner Fire, then this Cleric is suddenly a threat.
Yeah, they're not really expending a lot to make this. And the exact points you made, they are putting something down to where if Legolas puts down more of the chip damage minions, then they're going to allow Flamelord to draw. If this does survive long enough to see an Inner Fire off a second Divine Spirit, then it is legitimately a threat. Most of the time, what you're running into as the Priest against his Mage is you see a Polymorph, but there's one copy of it.
So the Arcanologist does net a Counterspell, so now that is Block Barrier and Counterspell that we've seen.
There's already a secret up as well, so Flamelord should be pretty easily able to sniff this out if he tests for the barrier.
And the pack picked up early is nice because New Zealand didn't have a lot of resources that create presence, but it also is a little bit bad because you have second copy of Shadow Visions in hand, and this game is likely going to go long, so maybe you could have used 2 copies of pack.
Don't be greedy. Just take your pack. Just take your pack.
I like control decks.
Nope, just take your pack.
What's better than 1 Binding Heal from a pack? 2 Binding Heals
but
from
that could
2 packs.
But that could be 2 Binding Heals in 1 pack.
Or it could be the Vorax.
In the Vorax, you got buffs. Think of a different card.
Spirit Singer Umbra.
Okay, there. We'll take that. The auto is
Tyrantus.
Crystal.
You can't even Divine Spirit the Tyrantus.
Oh, but the Tyrantus is big. Against the Mage? I think we like Tyrantus against Mage.
Okay, how about Ozark? Nobody likes Ozark.
Okay. Nobody likes Ozark. Well, the coin has to be thrown away, but does test for the counterspell, and that's really just far from being thrown away. Dragonfire Potion comes out, clears off the entire Mage board, and yeah. Legolas is back to the drawing board, is pretty far ahead on the fatigue counter, and obviously that's not going to become something that's super relevant. Legolas is just going to run out of damage, but taking fatigue damage continuously does not help your odds. More importantly, goes through the block.
Yeah, that is something that you do need to be a little bit concerned about because he's back to the drawing board, so he needs to draw to build a board, but that does then put him closer to fatigue, whereas New Zealand has the tools to exist for quite a while in this game and maybe even just push it to the end. Just draw him out, possibly. Second copy of Priest of the Feast would certainly help that.
Yeah, these tools are just frankly so subpar for Legolas right now.
Nobody's jockeying for board position. There was no early aggression, so Volcanic Potion is going to do nothing. Yeah, that's how inconsequential these cards are. Blood Mage Thalnos is just 2 mana, draw a card. Volcanic Potions are 6 mana, kill a 1/5.
And the only thing that's convenient for this Ungoro pack is that if Flamelord wants to get full value, he's got to start pitching stuff, and realistically, there isn't a smart way for him to even pitch.
Like, you can Priest of the Feast Divine Spirit, that loses to Polymorph and Meteor.
But more importantly, even though you feel like you're pretty ahead on resources, what if those cards in hand are just Alexstrasza?
And what if the Ungoro pack, like we were postulating about before, is just a bunch of junk?
5 copies of Ozark.
5 copies of Ravasor Rund.
All right, so goes ahead and decide he doesn't need to get full value. There's that Binding Heal.
Binding Heal.
Mana Bind, not awful either. The Mage is slinging a lot of good spells.
You could also just play down Tarlurker this turn.
Yeah. Well, more importantly, I think for mana bind is that if you put it down, you're going to overdraw your hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's everybody's friend, Tarlurker.
Not a bad outcome for Flame Lord. Not significant minion development, but it doesn't look like that's the way that this game is going to go.
All right, it's a little bit of juice coming into the hand. We see the Firelands Portal of Pyroblast. If you're unfamiliar with Tarlurker, it's actually a minion from the Warlock class.
Oh, that's a class?
Yeah, which may be why you don't know who Tarlurker is.
I just didn't know that there was one in between the one that everybody plays and the one that Warrior is sometimes forced to play.
You know, obviously we have a lot of fun here, but we're also about education. Tarlurker is a card from the Warlock set. Warlock is actually the 9th class. If you hit up A, down B, select star, you can actually play
You can
Warlock.
access the Warlock class, yeah. And you can reset all your Hearthstone data. Fun fact.
Yeah. All right, well, Legolas is looking at the board. He started to assemble some degree of burn, but going to need to find the Alexstrasza, and then he's going to need to hope that Flame Lord just isn't sitting on a bunch of heals and... Ugh.
It's going to get some rough news.
Yeah. This is, you know, I was talking about Binding Heal, which, you know, now it seems rigged because I brought up Binding Heal and then there it is in an Ungoro pack. But this is one of those situations where Priest, generally, if the Mage doesn't go super fast and get an early start on the board with Mana Worm, with Arcanologist, and just kind of truck them with a counter spell that eats an important spell, the Priest really can just outlast and just kind of dictate the pace. The Priest doesn't need to do anything. The Priest can just sit there and be like, you have to bring me from 30 here or 30 health to 0, or else I win.
Yeah, so I just need to stop you. You don't need to be in the position of aggressor. But that's the issue. Neither of these decks really want to be the aggressor. They're both very reactive. And then they get to sort of that tipping point where something has to happen.
You remember when Legolas said he was feeling good about this series?
Might be feeling a little less good now, but I don't think we should tweet at him. He looks a little busy.
Yeah. All right, so there's a free from Amber.
Nazdormu. Shoot. Not Nazdormu.
We were all thinking it. Yeah, these are actually some...
Subpar free from Ambers.
I was going to say, the Baseless Behemoth, I think it's just the one you take, it's just big.
Yeah, but in that vein, you would have much rather liked to see either of the Deathwings. Ysera is nice. It would have overdrawn you in this case, so a little less nice. But you know, even Gruul has the potential to get better or to get bigger than Faceless Behemoth.
Okay, so that ended up being okay. The Mediz Valet comes out. That's 3 burn damage you would have liked to send to the dome, but look, it puts a minion on the board. If the minion survives, it's going to get some damage in. You deal with that Faceless Behemoth, who I think has a new record of being in a competitive game of 8 seconds.
Oh, good for him.
Up from the 6 seconds.
Oh, I would have bet it was 0. Well, we should send him a card. Or a fruit basket to whoever designed Faceless Behemoth.
The old, at least you tried.
Pack fodder. What can we say? Radiant Elemental comes into the hand, and now this is looking like Lyra fodder to me. This entire hand can generate some more very useful spells once Lyra is drawn.
And yeah, at this point, Flame Lord's hand is looking really good for dealing with potential burn, but it could always be better.
Yeah. Who's getting greedy now, Rob?
I mean, he's in a position where he can get greedy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
He can get Shoop Paladin levels of greedy.
Oh, that's greedy, but it also wins tournaments, so...
It wins Dream Hacks.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
We're not talking Swiss, but we are...
We're talking like last hero standing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just looking at... You know, Brazil's at 8 cards remaining in the deck. New Zealand is at 15. Their hand size is larger. Their card quality is... It can deal with anything and everything that is put onto the board.
I like how you stopped yourself there. Yeah, you're like, it can deal with things.
It's
because that is pretty
good.
The card quality has actually gotten pretty good for Brazil there.
It has. Yeah. Hey, free Frostbolt. It's like they played Primordial Glyph.
Yeah, Legolas is trying to set himself in a position to generate some degree of pressure. And one thing I really like about Legolas as a player is, you know, he's someone who has his emotions written plainly on his face, but he calms himself and he tries to play to his outs. He's not just conceding, even though he understands that there's a pretty reasonable chance that the things in Flame Lord's hand mean Flame Lord probably wins.
Okay, but we've been harbingers of doom for Brazil throughout this game. How does Brazil possibly win, right? So it's going to start with Alexstrasza. That's going to be the catalyst for any burn damage. If Legolas can get out Alexstrasza and maybe connect with the minions at least one time, then there is potential that Flame Lord doesn't get to heal enough to be able to put him out of range, or that he heals and Legolas can remove, Priest of the Feast, for instance, and then still burn afterwards. But regardless, it is all going to start because of Alexstrasza. So until that card is drawn for Brazil, there's not much that they can actually do.
Excuse me, you are...
And even still, post Alexstrasza, they have exactly 15 in
You
hand.
were looking for the upside.
I was. But then I covered it, and now we're... Oh, there we go.
Okay, there's the Alexstrasza. If you're Legolas, you technically have the damage in hand. Now, yes, the Priest has a hero power, which heals for 2.
Yep. But
and
you can...
there's probably more, but...
You Alex this turn. Medivh's Valet goes in, puts Flame Lord to 13.
Yeah.
2 hero powers somehow need to be neutralized from New Zealand at very minimum. That's if there's no other heal in hand for New Zealand.
Now, Legolas discussing it with the rest of the team on voice comms. And they're having that same conversation like, okay, but how do we piece it together if we were going to piece it together?
Mm-hmm.
Is this maybe that leap of faith turn where you Alexstrasza and say, we just need to draw a way to win? It looks like it's not, but...
Oh. Well...
Legolas is having fond memories of turn 4 wins with Druid, and he's like, well, okay.
We got him, and now we've been got. And
Yeah.
we've been had.
All right,
Would
Dirty
be
Rat could
grammatically
just
correct.
pull the Alexstrasza, and then that will actually just begin.
Yeah, that's game. Dirty Rat, death the Alex.
And this is, we talk a lot about the turn 2 Dirty Rat, but when do you actually use the Dirty Rat? This is a great turn for it. Basically, unless something comes out with 4 attack, Flame Lord can deal with it.
So Dirty Red, obviously, against aggressive decks is a big wall for very cheap, and the minions that you pull from, say, Bloodlust Shaman or Aggro Druid are probably going to be less attack than
Sure.
the Dirty Rat is health. So in that case, it's very good. But against control decks and combo decks, Dirty Rat just is a disruptive tool. He disrupts everything that you're trying to do and can pull, cards like Alexstrasza, can pull Medivh and deny the Atiesh Battle Cry. Can be so incredibly effective, even more so against control decks than against aggro decks. So I think if you start with the Dirty Rat here and you pull Alex, it's just game. You don't really have a reason not to do it, but you also just don't have to do anything. I think I probably would have pained the Buzzard. Or Holy Nova it, or
This is just revenge.
anything it.
Flame Lord is like, well, this is what you get for doing that thing you did with the Aggro Druid last time. We're just gonna sit here and I'm gonna do nothing. All right, well, there is that. Alexstrasza comes down, sets Flame Lord to 12. And now I believe we truly begin the game.
The game has officially started. 18 turns in. We're here.
All right, so Priest of the Feast, Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death.
Binding Heal,
Why not?
Divine Spirit.
And, as we pointed out, Legolas and the rest of Team Brazil are not ignorant to what was going on there. They understood why all these cards were being kept, but it was a situation where you have to try to win the game at some point, and Alexstrasza was how you tried to win the game, so... Yeah, Flame Lord might not even feel the need to commit the Binding Heal. Might want to see if he can debate out a little bit more burn before going for it.
Fair enough.
Just
Make
make sure-
Legolas think that he still has
Flame Lord's like, no,
a
you
chance.
got me on the ropes, man. Just keep flinging burn.
I'm at
You'll be
21.
fine."
If you got 2 Pyroblasts, I'm dead.
Well, there's the Meteor. Priest of the Feast is now officially extinct, and there goes the Medivh Valley and the ping. So, again, there is more burn in this deck for Brazil. New Zealand, Flame Lord specifically, as is usually the case with this player, just looks pretty nonplussed, just not super concerned.
I can certainly understand why he's in a very secure spot right now. You've seen the leftmost card in Brazil's hand in their hand for the entirety of the game. You can maybe start to pin that on a secret that is either inconsequential or not playable.
Yeah, when you see that card on the far left has been there since turn 2, you just kind of go, that's probably second ice block.
Yeah. So now New Zealand does have the option of getting the ball rolling with Lyra.
At the Dirty Rat here, this is actually an interesting point because if there is some odd wrinkle they haven't accounted for, they did use a Shadow Word Death, they did use a Shadow Word Pain, so let's just say Deathwing comes off there for some reason.
Yeah, or, Antonitis maybe. They wouldn't actually have a way to deal with it.
Yeah. But the Dirty Rat does come out. Nothing bad happens. Choosing to hold that Arcanologist, which is just essentially a River Crocolisk for them. All right, there's a Medivh. Now, Medivh could be something big, especially with the Pyroblast on the way.
Medivh actually is probably the only remaining resource that can win the game for Brazil. Even a second copy of Pyroblast wouldn't have been enough, but Medivh can create repetitive damage. It's just got a little bit interesting, actually.
Well, the Holy Nova would allow them to deal with the body of Medivh.
Is there a second copy of Death in the deck for Flame Lord? Oh, there's Greater Healing Potion. That's a little mean.
That Potion of Madness would allow them to deal with...
both minions.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, you're basically saying, all right, Atiash, what you got? This is, we were talking about it earlier. In this current meta, running weapon removal, it used to be just something you were looking at, okay, we got to deal with the warriors, we got to deal with the paladins, maybe we deal with the hunters as well in more aggressive times for them, but now the #1 most wanted weapon to break is just Atiash.
So they did pick up the Dragonfire Potion. Not worried about killing Medivh this turn, simply want to get the most possible value off of Lyra. Okay, there is a death.
All right, now Legolas starting to look like a man who's getting a little bit bamboozled.
Well, you can Fire Lens the Lyra. It gives you a 7-drop and a 5-drop. You can then clear off the Dirty Rat with a Hero Power.
That's 6-5. A lot of times you just want big stats. Sated Threshodon.
That's a little bit annoying. Well, okay, maybe not so much. Shadow Word Death, Dragonfire Potion still clears everything.
Sure, but there's still 2 more charges on Atiash. Yeah, we see the second Dragonfire Potion, but that was
10 drops often have more than 5 health unless you're Yogg-Saron.
Yeah, Yogg-Saron is essentially the worst outcome I think you can get from Atiash.
Even N'Zoth is better.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, all
so
things considered, that was a pretty amazing Lyra.
not concerned by the 3/1/1s, would rather have that Shadow Word Death remaining for whatever else could come out of Atiash.
Playmore just says, bring it on. Another Faceless Behemoth. Oh my gosh, how long does this one live? Just hold your turn, Legolas.
Are we
Hold your
counting
turn.
individual behemoths or behemoths as a total? Because if this is total behemoths in a competitive game, then we're already like way over.
All right. Flame Lord generally takes slower turns, so I think we're going to get more mileage out of this behemoth.
Oh yeah, the behemoth counter is going up.
Can we get production? Is there a timer we can put up there?
I start my stopwatch.
No, he's dead.
You know what? That was a good run.
Good night, sweet prince.
Legolas did not look too happy about that randomly generated Shadow Word Death. If that 10/10 had been able to stick around, it very well may have been the last minion in play, actually.
All right, we see a Fireball, and that is the most value that we can get out of Atiash, but the Primordial Glyph is there. If Primordial Glyph can net him something, say Pyroblast, say Fireball, say
Kabbalah's
Firelance
Tome,
Portal.
Firelance Portal.
Firelance Portal, pretty juicy. Can't use that Arcane Intellect.
I mean, Greater Healing Potion is still going to
Yeah.
heal.
But we're trying to think about this from Legolas'
so
side.
you're thinking you need repetitive minion damage at this point.
Yeah. And that minion has 4 attack.
It does. That's impossible for the priest to kill.
This could just end up being a, potential... No, never mind. Inner Fire's there.
Yeah. And Legolas now down to 1 card left in the deck. I think I have an idea of what he said there. It was a good thing it was censored. Oh. Glyph Gamers.
It's nothing.
Nope. Not good.
All right, Firelands Portal needs to come up big. Okay.
4 attack. Now it just needs to hit a lot.
Now 3 cards left. You know, 1 card in hand is probably Ice Block. If you've been counting, you haven't seen a second Arcane Intellect. And then there's whatever came off the Primordial Glyph. So
Oh, Legolas is going to go ahead and throw out the concede.
Flame Lord with that low-key Flame Lord BM. It doesn't happen often. He's a man of a very, very stoic attitudes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Loxodontes, he looks like the sort of guy who's BMing you on ladder, you know, in his behaviors. Flame Lord's just kind of like, greetings. Yeah.
Like, you greet him and he greets you because he wants to greet you.
Yeah, but now New Zealand retaking the series now up 2-1. Yep. They're on match point. Can they continue their dominant streak in the Hearthstone Global Games? We are going to find out. Up next is going to be Koglarine with the Hunter versus Ting Tong on the Shaman.
Okay, Hunter, not a deck we've seen yet today. There's not too much that you can really do with the Hunter class. Mid-range Hunter is to be expected, I think, at this point, pretty much in every scenario because it is the most consistent Hunter build. But against a Shaman, the Hunter does have some good tools. Unleash the Hounds can be fantastic in cleaning up boards of, you know, totems, for instance, that don't actually deal damage, but that do clutter up the board state. Also, it does have early game, which can fight quite well against what the Shaman has to offer.
I want to say Koglarine was playing the deck last week as well. I want to say he has, you know, Rat Pack. It's otherwise just, pretty standard. Ting Tong has certainly made a name for himself being a little bit more of an aggressive player just recently. So looking forward to this. Koglarine is someone who has been knocking on the door of a Hearthstone Championship Tour championship. I think he's been in 2 or 3 matches now where he's kind of been gate kept out, right? It was that battle for one of the spots in the top 8.
Very close.
Yeah. He's been right there. Koglarine is a player who certainly in terms of overall competitive excellence, I think a lot of the members of the Brazilian team kind of look at and say, okay, this is someone we can trust. And we see him being the ace match player as well for Brazil. So he's certainly got the chops. He's got the competitive background. So no surprise to see Koglarine here.
No, not at all. He is, though the Brazilian team has great names, has players with lots of experience, Koglarine has the Open Cup experience. He has the ladder experience. He has the prelims/playoff experience. So he's definitely a great guy to send in when, you know, the straits are dire, when it's down to game 5 and you need somebody to come through for you in a big way, especially when all of your players are not in the same room playing from the same location. It is going to be more likely that you need somebody who can make some snap decisions. If the rope is burning, they need to make an executive decision, and that's putting a lot of faith in Koglarine, saying that he is the guy that can get the job done.
Yeah. Ting Tong has performed fairly well in his time in the Hearthstone Global Games.
He has great taste in hats.
Yeah. I don't really like snapback hats. I think it makes the average person kind of look like a jerk, but Ting Tong pulls it off.
Every head. It's just practical, Rob.
Oh.
You know a thing or two about, you know.
Don't finish that sentence. I dare you. All right, let's go ahead and get into game.
Hunter.
All right, we see the Flare in there as well as a Firefly. Now, Firefly, not a beast, but certainly such a powerful minion. A powerful one-drop that Hunter, despite its vast swath of one-drops there, goes ahead and runs. It certainly hints more towards a very aggressive posture.
Well, in a mage-heavy meta, playing a Hunter with 2 copies of Flare is certainly more flexible than putting secret eating mechanics in any other build. So I can certainly see why Hunter would be maybe a decent option in this meta. Even Paladin has, you know, secrets in every deck via a Hydrologist. So the Hunter can keep up in the early game, it pushes consistent damage with the hero power, and it can destroy secrets while drawing cards. It's not bad. I actually quite like it.
No, not at all. And Hunter, you know, in the meta prior to set rotation, Hunter was kind of warming up where Warlock is now. It was just unplayable. We watched Zalay, I think, slog through 470 games, and I think he emerged. And this is Zalay, one of the best players in all of the game.
Zalay is a champion at bringing, you know, at giving odd decks the chance that they don't deserve.
But I think he ended up after 470 games with like a 48% win rate. So that just tells you how dire the situation was for the class in this meta. I think people were a little higher on it at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But it's cooled off since then. But Hunter can certainly get you there, and as mages have risen in popularity, as you said, Flare is a powerful tool. You're pushing damage. The mage thinks it's safe. It's actually just dead. All right, the Jade Claw is going to come out, though, do work, and if Ting Tong can just go ahead and chase Koglerine off the board, then it's going to take a comeback mechanic, say Unleash the Hounds, Scavenging Hyena, but even then, Scavenging Hyena obviously absurdly weak to devolve.
Yes, that is going to be the biggest removal for Scavenging Hyena outside of any strict hard removal such as Hex, which we don't see in the Shaman deck. So a Devolve coming out in the face of a Scavenging Hyena would be disastrous for the Hunter because they put so much into their early game. They need to curve out from turn 1 to 5, to 6, which is Savannah Highmane, because they don't have significant card draw in the class, and they suffer greatly if they do miss any of those important turns where they can play a strong minion on curve that synergizes.
Yeah, they are very linear in their playstyle. There's a situation here where you can just fully chase the Hunter off the board again, or you can try to push some damage. If you do push damage, you are allowing Koglerine to get a little bit of a value trade with that Flame Elemental, but what's the real harm in it, says Ting Tong.
So Houndmaster definitely being slated for turn 4, but that means you do need to have a beast live until that point.
Yeah, and this is a problem. So many of the beasts in hand for Koglerine just play right into a nice, juicy Maelstrom portal.
It is a great counter against the Hunter early game.
I think he's going to have to take a risk here. I think he just has to go wide. Say Maelstrom portal is not there. You've got that Scavenging Hyena down. Potentially, you could go for the Houndmaster depending on what survives, but I think you have to definitively chase the Shaman off the board at some point.
If the Hunter doesn't have, 1-drop beast into 2-drop adapt, it can be very tough to actually get past the Shaman's efficient early game removal. You have Jade Claws, you have Flame Tongue Totem on any number of weaker minions to trade up. It's a tall task.
It looks like the Scavenging Hyena is going to come down. Koglerine's kind of abandoning hope that this is going to get just a ton of value. Realizes that in this matchup it is inherently just a little bit weak anyway.
This
still does not play around Maelstrom Portal well at all.
No. You just run the 1/1 in Maelstrom Portal.
Yeah.
Granted, it's the only thing that Ting Tong can do this turn.
Well, okay, so if you had not put down the Hyena, you put down the Alley Cats, and you put down the Flame Elemental. If Maelstrom Portal doesn't happen, the odds of a beast surviving on the board.
We're okay. Flame Tongue coming down would have
this
killed them anyway.
This was weak to Flame Tongue Totem. This was weak to Maelstrom Portal.
Everything that you're going to do is weak to everything that the Shaman class has right now.
Yeah.
There's just not
All right, now
much they could have done.
Now we're just going wide. You've seen one Maelstrom Portal. You feel pretty good that something will survive. The Houndmaster will get to stick. Kindly Grandmother, super good against this style of board, which is just small minions.
Resilient against Maelstrom Portal because it has the Death Rattle. The Shaman doesn't want to have to expend resources like Jade Lightning to kill off the Wolf. Jade Claws is going to be the most efficient form of removal, but we saw that already clearing off Firefly early on.
Man, if Koglerine was playing the Hunter quest, he'd be pretty close to...
He would be. He would probably be even further behind, but he'd almost be getting there. We'd be Marsh Queening it up. Life Coach would be having nightmares.
I was going to say, wherever Life Coach is asleep right now, he would sense it.
Nightmares of raptors. Jurassic Park style.
All right, well, Hero Power and the Primal Fin Totem comes down, and Ting Tong just going to take his time, trading off some of these things. Leaves two beasts on the board. Wow, Ting Tong just does not care about your board.
No. Okay, so Houndmaster coming down means that Primal Fin Totem can get cleared off, but Rat Pack just being drawn means that now you're a little bit hesitant, because if you Houndmaster the Rat Pack, then you get 4 1/1s when it Death Rattles, but Devolve doesn't care about your Death Rattles or your buffs, so maybe you just go for it this turn.
Yeah, the only thing Devolve respects is the actual mana cost of cards, so... All right, Koglerine going to stick on this board now, get a little bit more going.
I mean, this is a strong board from Brazil. And after having seen Maelstrom Portal, no Devolve in hand, there's no way for New Zealand to clear off the entirety of this board in one turn, and Hunter damage racks up quickly.
It certainly does. Now, Ting Tong can go into next turn knowing that he has the Doppelgangster Evolve and just says, okay, I'm just going to have a bigger board regardless.
That's a fantastic draw.
Yeah.
So when Rat Pack death rattles, it death rattles into 1/1 rats equal to the attack of Rat Pack when it dies. It does respect buffs that are adjacent, or Timberwolf, for instance, being on board. So if Rat Pack were to die this way, you would get 3 1/1s instead of 2. But 3/6 drops is nice too. Oh, that's
Oh
mean.
my goodness, 3 legendaries. Oh, let's be honest, Highmane's a legend.
It's a legendary.
Oh,
If you told me, Rob, if we went
goodness.
into this saying, who's going to play Highmane first, the Hunter or the Shaman? I don't think I would have said Shaman.
Hearthstone's a magical game.
Crazy things happen.
Yeah. That is just, in terms of roles, that is
360
good.
windmill evolve. That's,
Yeah.
Illidan's actually going to get value.
That's,
Oh my God. Imagine if you evolve the first time, you get Illidan, then you get a bunch of 2/1s, then you evolve again.
wow.
Madness.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's just
Such
absurd.
things have never been done.
Oh, they probably have.
Probably in a Trollton video somewhere.
Well, the Highmane, I mean, the biggest factor in the Highmane here isn't necessarily the body. It's the fact that it, look, the same reason Highmane is good for Hunter, it's good for the Shaman here. It is durable. The Hunter does not have access to tools like Hex, Polymorph, so that Highmane is just going to be an absolute nuisance. The Hogger also has to be dealt with because it's just generating 2/2 taunts.
So Kagorn had the option there to hit 5 to face, put Ting Tong down to 14, and then just try to make this board work for lethal. A kill command off the top maybe could have gotten them there. Oh, 3 mana, 4/5. But instead, he chose to trade, reduce the damage on board, and play a little bit more defensively. But when the Shaman has 3 cards in hand, you have nothing. This is your last stand, and you know you're not going to beat this board. I maybe would have liked to see Kagorn YOLO the 5 to face there.
Well, Ting Tong is the Hunter now, has the Highmane just going. Eagle Hornbow not going to do it, and that is going to be it. New Zealand cannot be stopped. I don't even know when the last time they were defeated was. It's been
I
so
think
long.
it was week 1.
It might have been week 1 or 2, but it was a long time
I think it was
ago.
in their very first match, and they have, I want to say, not lost since then. I may be wrong. I think we'll actually get the opportunity to ask. But that was a rough couple of last games there for Brazil, but New Zealand playing spot on, absolutely so deserving of how far they've come in this tournament. And, a little bit disappointing for me as I did pick Brazil early on, but now New Zealand up 2-0, Brazil at 1-1. There's a chance that both of these teams can still make it out of their group.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, the first game we saw some back and forth there, some stuff happening, but games 2, 3, and 4 were frankly kind of gross in a lot of respects.
They were one-sided, to say the least.
Yeah.
Especially that Druid game, but that's one that you can go back and watch. It won't take much of your time.
No, it's nice. It fits very concisely into a Trollton highlight reel.
It does. The
All right,
whole
so
game.
See here again, the Brazil managed to win game 2 in record time off the back of that aggro druid, double Hungry Crab, just sheer lunacy. But then from there, New Zealand was able to eke it out. The Priest just able to outlast the Mage, just utilizing those card generation effects to great effect. And to be fair, Legolas made it a lot closer than I think we suspected it would be.
He did. That
And then,
Medivh coming in very clutch at the end, almost was able to get it done, but Shadow Word Death off of the Lyra, Burning Heal, an additional copy of Greater Healing Potion. It just wasn't their game to win.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Group D standings now with this match in the books. As you said, New Zealand sitting proud with a 2-0 record representing the Australia-New Zealand team. Brazil and Taiwan at 1-1 apiece, and Hungary down there at 0-2 with a game record of 0-6. So Hungary is in a really bad spot in terms of actually escaping the group.
That's a bit rough for them. It doesn't look like they're going to be making it out. Brazil just 1 game ahead as far as game score over the 3rd place spot. So right now they're in 2nd place, but it is tentative. There's going to be one more match for them, of course, to decide who will end up in that 2nd place spot. So if Brazil wins, it looks like their game record will just be better
All right, well, we have the opportunity now to speak to Ting Tong representing Team New Zealand. Ting Tong, congratulations on the win.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so how's it been for you guys? You guys kind of came in and, frankly, were a bit of a question mark. You're looking at some of the powerhouse teams, and New Zealand maybe wasn't something that was on the map for a lot of people, but you all haven't lost in like 2 months. What's it been like?
We're absolutely buzzing, eh? I think we just got our chemistry just locked down, teamwork, everything. We all just like during each turn, it's a decision that we all make together. So I think, we just work well as a team, and I think that's key to our success so far.
Well, this was definitely a pretty definitive series in your favor. The first game, maybe a little bit back and forth, but that second game, I have to ask, when you saw not only the first Hungry Crab, but the second Hungry Crab come down, how were you guys feeling in that case?
Oh, we knew it was over. We're like turn 2, it was done. So I guess we were pretty gutted, but we couldn't do anything about it. So, just got to move on to the next game.
Yeah, you didn't let it affect you. You came back and you won the next 2 pretty easily. So very well done. That definitely would have shaken some other people.
So on a week-to-week basis, I know I'm talking to Pathra a fair bit, and she generally tells me that she kind of performs a lot of the administrative roles. But when it comes to, coming up with the deck list, I had a chance to cast your guys' match last week as well. You guys have some interesting picks at times. How do you guys come up with the deck list you're using?
So not to give too much strategy away, but we base it around the meta also. So we look at the meta, we see what decks are pretty prominent, and it's been pretty much the same lately. So we haven't had to really do too much digging and research. So we've got a bunch of deck lists that we always consider to pick. So when it comes up, it doesn't take too much work, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, I guess I'm curious, what has it been like for you all representing the Australia-New Zealand region, which obviously 2 different countries, sure, but you guys all often come up together in conversation, Australia and New Zealand. But what's it like to have the opportunity to advance to Stage 2 and be able to represent you guys?
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic, I guess. Before the tournament, I think New Zealand really hasn't been on the map in terms of Hearthstone. So, this is huge, even for the APAC region for Australia, I guess, so to have one team in the region to go through so they can get behind us if they want to also. So I think that's really good too.
Awesome. Well, anything you want to say to your fans out there who are cheering you on from both Australia and New Zealand?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the support. It means a lot to the team. And we'll just hope that we can keep on winning, eh? Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Thanks a bunch, man, and have a good night and good morning, I guess, over there, and have a great time.
Congratulations.
All right, thanks. See ya.
Yeah, as I said, or as Ting Tong said, New Zealand wasn't necessarily on the map. We've talked to that's been the story of a couple of different countries in this tournament. They're changing it up in a big way. They are putting themselves on the map, and that's what's so cool about a unique tournament like this.
New Zealand is they're riding the high. Every time we've had a chance to interview them, they've just been so incredibly excited. It doesn't seem like they're ever really getting used to this success. It seems like it's really driving them still consistently to want to succeed more and more, because it is something that the world didn't quite expect, but now they're basking in it, and it's really, really working wonders for them.
Yeah, really excited to see success for them and some of the other teams. Let's go ahead and take a look at how today's matches panned out. We had opened up with Argentina going 3-0 against the Philippines, and then Brazil falling short 1-3 to New Zealand. If you're a big fan of competitive Hearthstone, the next week or so, a little over, is going to be extremely exciting. This weekend, we have the conclusion of the Wild Open that I was casting a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
We're going to see the top 8 players from all across the world in Wild competing for a chance at prize, pride, and much more. And then we move on to the final week of Stage 2 of the Hearthstone Global Games next week. There will not be a North America broadcast, but there's going to be so much action going on from the Europe broadcast. Be sure to tune into the guys over there. And then the piece de la resistance. We get into...
Big money.
Thank you. We're working on that. We get into the Spring Championship, so that's going to be live from Shanghai, China. Again, some of the best players in the world competing for the opportunity to move on to the World Championship, win a bunch of prize money, and, you know, be the next player to put their name in the big book of tall tales of Hearthstone history. So a lot to look forward to. Cora, anything you want to say before we go?
It's been a wild ride. There's only one more week left in Stage 2, so I can't wait to see who's going to be making it out to Stage 3. Sure. I've had a fantastic time getting to cast this tournament. Hopefully you have as well, Rob, and I can't wait to see what comes out of competitive Hearthstone over these next couple of weeks. It's gonna be a good one. Yeah, very exciting time. Looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds. But guys, that's gonna do it for us here live from the ESL Burbank studio in California. Have a great night, and we'll see you later.